confrontational approach. Countries.
China opposes, wow, confrontational. Politicizations and the confrontational approach.
Was convening this informal meeting today pursuant to that resolution. The Syrian crisis has dragged on for many years. The Syrian people have suffered deeply from the scourge of war, and their most basic human rights, including rights to subsistence and development and health, are not guaranteed. The pressing task now is to seek an early political solution to the Syrian crisis and give the Syrian people a peaceful and tranquil living environment with special attention to protecting women, children, and other vulnerable groups. The human rights situation in Syria is affected by both natural and man-made disasters. The factors such as the COVID-19 pandemic and natural disasters have further exacerbated the humanitarian situation in Syria. Unilateral coercive measures, illegal blockade, and other man-made factors have gravely undermined the ability and the man-made disasters. Alina Dokhan, the special rapporteur, last December, that it believed that the unilateral announced that the unilateral coercive measures are major obstacle to the economic development, reconstruction, and civilian hinder Syrian people's access to essential medical supplies and services, and making the humanitarian situation in Syria much worse. If countries like Germany really cares about the humanitarian needs in Syria, they should support without any condition the removal of unilateral coercive measures and stop the politicization of the humanitarian issues. Stop using it instead of pointing, dictating, and accusing finger at China and other countries for their voting positions.
Telling me about me, but the next 4 videos under this one,
China urges the countries concerned.
Google's telling me I need church.
To lift the unilateral coercive measures against Syria in response to the calls by the Secretary General and the Special Rapporteur. Thank you. To protect Syrian people's right to subsistence and development. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the distinguished representative of China. We have heard the last speaker. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I thank the distinguished panelists for their participation in this high-level panel on the situation of human rights in Syria. This situation in Syria requires the full attention of the United Nations, including human rights bodies, accountability mechanisms, the Security Council, and here in the General Assembly. The violations of international humanitarian law and abuses of human rights, including those that may amount to crimes against humanity and war crimes, have, over the course of 10 years, torn apart the fabric of society in Syria. I trust that, in line with existing resolutions and the spirit of the Charter of the United Nations, member states will continue to support improvement of the human rights situation in Syria, improved humanitarian access, the call for an immediate and nationwide ceasefire, and support for a Syrian-led, Syrian-owned political settlement in accordance with Security Council Resolution 2254 and the UN's efforts in this regard. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the Syrian people need the United Nations, and we must answer their call for help. I thank you. I thank the delegations for their participation. The high-level panel discussion is now concluded. If Before adjourning the meeting, I would also like to call the attention of the members to the letter circulated on 26th of February 2021, which has information regarding the occupational safety and health plan for this meeting, including the possibility of follow-up in the unfortunate and hopefully unlikely event of a case of COVID-19. Following the arrangements in recent meetings, the Secretariat will actively manage the exit by calling each row for departure in a staggered manner. Members are therefore requested to remain seated after the adjournment of the meeting. The meeting is adjourned.
None of the secret handshakes in the elevator shed now, eh?
Distinguished delegates, I would now kindly request that you leave the GA Hall.
Welcome to Global 3000. The Shah Mountains in North Macedonia boast stunning landscapes, but this natural paradise is under threat. In India, we visit school children determined to learn during the pandemic, even outdoors in less than ideal conditions. And in Mexico, education currently means sitting in front of a TV. We look at the impact of schools staying closed for months. Education, shared learning, and the opportunity to engage with their peers. Barely anything is more important for children. But the coronavirus pandemic has turned things upside down for our globe's 1.5 billion school kids. Shut schools have led to homeschooling and online remote learning. It's a highly improvised situation. But education generally has long been a pressing global issue. 264 million children worldwide have no access to it at all, and the pandemic has made things much worse. Currently, around 463 million children are not receiving any form of education, neither in the classroom nor at home. Better to have a bit of school than none at all. That's the motto of the Mexican government. Its current education program centers around something found in most living rooms.
American Sesame Streets from the 80s and 90s. Trust me.
A kitchen for a classroom, and instead of pen and paper, a remote control. It's a way of learning that calls for a lot of discipline.
Like regular school doesn't.
It feels weird, but I'll do my best.
Between 4 o'clock in the afternoon and 7 in the evening, all middle school students in Mexico watch classes on TV. Topics include the Big Bang and Galileo.
They said Galileo went to prison, but I don't get why.
11-year-old Christopher's questions will remain unanswered. The government-funded program broadcasts a new class every day. Infection levels in the country are still high, and children may not yet return to the classroom. Christopher doesn't want to get the virus in case he infects his grandmother. Next up is music, followed by math. Christopher is glad when his mother comes home from work earlier than usual.
Have you got a class? Yes, but I only understand half of it.
Hilda is a single mother. She's supposed to work the whole day, but she wants to be there to help her son get used to this new kind of learning.
If they don't pay attention in school, then they really aren't going to concentrate when they're left on their own with the TV and their school books.
Meanwhile, private schools in Mexico are focusing on online classrooms. For her Spanish class, Isabella is collecting objects and will write a story about them. She only gets to see her classmates on a screen, but at least she sees them.
At first, I thought it would be terrible, but it isn't. It's new, but I'd still prefer actual school.
In English class, there's a surprise test in store. She gets to talk to her teachers, and her parents are working at home, so they're on hand to help too. For 10-year-old Isabella, online learning is going well.
High five, guys!
Many in Mexico fear that the pandemic will exacerbate the country's problem with social inequality.
There's a growing imbalance. I'm worried about our country. Education is what society needs in order to make progress.
The Mexican government is pinning its hopes on the school broadcasts. Given that 16 million households have no internet connection, the TV classes are the best solution. Simply allowing millions of children to miss out on school isn't an option, experts say.
Ethically speaking, that would be a mistake. We would have failed in our educational duty. This is an alternative. It's not perfect. It doesn't reach everyone. We must continue to look for better solutions, other options.
Hilda is concerned. Christopher hasn't taken any notes at all. At some point, the teachers are supposed to email their students questions about what they've learned. The family borrowed an old iPad from friends.
To be honest, I'm not sure that we will learn much this way.
Instead of returning to the classroom for the new school year, Mexico's school children are watching TV. It's not ideal, but it's better than nothing.
Things are far from ideal for many school kids in India too, and images like these seem like a distant dream right now. India has been hard hit by the coronavirus. Government schools have been closed since the lockdown started, affecting almost 250 million primary and secondary school kids. Only older pupils are still receiving partial tuition. For poorer families, there's no alternative to analog education, but some are determined to make it happen.
The sight that greets Poonam every morning is typical in today's India. The country is one huge construction site. Society is in flux, and India is visibly transforming. Beneath this overpass on the outskirts of Delhi, Poonam and other local teenagers are meeting for lessons in reading, writing, and arithmetic. A school on a building site. The din is deafening. Obviously, this isn't a suitable place for a classroom, but with state schools closed because of the coronavirus pandemic, the kids have no other option.
That's why I come here. I come twice a day so I can keep up with my studies. We have English in the morning and math and science in the afternoon. It means I can keep up with my classes and hopefully at some point pass my exams.
Nagesh Pal is a qualified social scientist. He's applied for a job with the government and is waiting to hear back. In the meantime, he volunteers as a teacher in this makeshift school.
These students haven't been able to go to school for 4 or 5 months. It's really hard on them. They come from poor families, their parents are illiterate, day laborers, field workers. It's hard enough for them to get an education at all, and now the pandemic has made it even more difficult.
Poonam goes home at midday. Her parents are hard at work on the fields, harvesting okra. Her mother has been up since dawn and expects Poonam to help out.
I helped out with the harvest yesterday, and today I also have to help. I don't like working on the fields, but my mother says we children have to help. Then the work is done faster. My brother takes the vegetables to the market.
I've always worked. I never went to school. It wasn't an option for me.
The Kumaris have 6 children who all need to be looked after and fed until they leave home. Poonam is 15, and her mother feels it's time she moved out.
The costs of keeping our fields going are so high, we barely have enough to get by. We would have married her off, but we can't afford a dowry. No one would take her without one.
Sons can eventually bring in an income, But to poor families, daughters are simply an added expense, and there's no point in getting them an education. The poorer the family, the more deeply entrenched this way of thinking is. India has a population of nearly 1.4 billion, and millions live in poverty. Only 1 in 5 households has internet access. In many rural areas, there isn't even electricity. This digital divide contributes to social inequality. Experts warn that now the global pandemic is further jeopardizing children's educational opportunities.
There are laudable efforts in terms of schooling of children in remote tribal areas. The digital means that even those who have walked to the school in the last decade or so, they're off the map of learning. The infrastructure penetration for receiving digital is not even patchy, it's simply non-existent if we look at the divide of inequality.
The most important challenge that we are facing is the lack of technological devices, the smart devices. There is a huge gap between the haves and have-nots. So the children who are not having the
student with a reliable internet connection at home. A private school in India costs the equivalent of around 1,000 euros a year. For most people, that's simply unaffordable.
Governments, I feel that I'm so privileged to be in a family which can provide me with resources like laptops, internet, but think of the government school children who are not able to even attend the classes. So that's, I think so, a lack of this.
The classes held underneath the bridge on the outskirts of Delhi are worlds away from Ashi's online lessons. So far, no one here has come down with the virus, but no one wears masks, and the students are huddled together. If they keep their distance, they wouldn't hear the teacher above the noise. So they're taking their chances.
Very smart.
If they miss one day, they can catch up. But if they miss a whole year of schooling, they'll miss the boat completely and won't stand a chance.
Young people want is a chance to improve their lot in life by getting an education. Now even that modest goal could be denied them.
I don't want to end up like my parents, working on the field. I want to learn something and have a better life. I want to make something of myself. I want to be educated.
Poonam would like to stay and give other young people like herself better opportunities. For that, she's willing to go to a makeshift school under an overpass on a construction site.
And now for Global Ideas for Balkans. Our reporter Holger Chechak travelled to North Macedonia before the pandemic and enjoyed some local traditions, as well as some awe-inspiring nature. The European Green Belt is a nature conservation initiative running along the corridor of the former Iron Curtain, which once divided East and West Europe. Its aim is to protect natural environments around this area, environments like the Shah Mountains in North Macedonia.
It doesn't take long to set up a mobile outdoor cinema in the village of Vratnica. By contrast, efforts to establish a new national park here in North Macedonia have been dragging on for decades. Vratnica lies at the foot of the Shar Planina mountain range. Frozina Pandurska is a conservation activist based in the capital, Skopje. She and her friends have come here to screen a short film about Shar Planina. She wants to win over the people living here to her cause. There are problems to address. Trash is one of them. Quite a few villagers show up for the screening. Pandurska and her colleagues organized it under the auspices of the NGO Friends of Shar, where they work. They weren't sure local people would in fact be interested. Pandurska, who is a journalist, says conservation should be possible to do more to protect this beautiful mountainous area. After the screening, the activists and local people talk about their concerns. Villagers have been struggling for 5 years to prevent the construction of a hydropower plant nearby. They challenge the Friends of Shar, asking why they haven't been helping them. They said the NGO should engage more with the people who actually live here. There are many villages in the region facing similar problems. Shar Planina measures 80 kilometers by 30. Over the past 2 decades, threats to this scenic wilderness have been mounting.
Shar Planina is the mountain range with the greatest biodiversity in North Macedonia, and it must be protected to the highest. If it is declared a national park, it will be accorded the most protection, even across national borders.
Shar Planina lies near what was once the Iron Curtain. The ribbon of land and some areas nearby have been designated the European Greenbelt by an association of the same name. Its mission is to protect the natural landscapes there, which have been shielded for decades from major developments such as farming and construction. The association promotes ecotourism. Renovating mountain huts and building new ones should entice more hikers to come and explore. The association also seeks legal logging, which is a serious problem here. The timber mafia has carved this track through the forest without permission. It extends for several kilometers. An SUV blocks the path. Behind it, heavy equipment. They're often armed, and it would not be wise to go any further with the camera rolling. The conservationists monitor changes in the forest with the help of an app and satellite imagery. Jovan Bozinovsky is a mountain guide and also active in Friends of Shar. He says the timber thieves sometimes fell trees, and they just leave them lying around in the forest. Shepherds are natural allies of the conservationists, as they have a vital interest in preserving the forests and meadows and keeping an eye on illegal logging. The Friends of Shar platform emphasizes the importance of monitoring. Nasser Gemaili is a sheep farmer.
He's not a shepherd, he's a sheep farmer. Thank you.
He used to take visitors on hikes until the pandemic hit.
Oh, I get it.
On the terrain up here, four-wheel drive vehicles are of no use. Friends of Shar see great potential in gentle tourism. Nasser Gemaili and his brother have 5,000 sheep. The used milk cheese they make is famous throughout the region. Their entire business depends on the preservation of the natural habitat.
I would totally welcome a national park in Shar Planina. That's why I support the initiative.
Nasser Gemaili and his brother inherited the farm from their parents and have since expanded its operations. They employ 25 shepherds. During the season, they spend 2 weeks at a time up in the mountains, living in huts like this. The only source of power here are small solar panels, enough to light the huts. With a new hydropower plant, that would change, the shepherd explains.
It would be good. Then our little villages would finally have electricity.
When they bring it to you, they're going to take it straight to
These small hydropower plants are promoted as a green energy and good for people, but in reality, they destruct the ecosystem of the rivers.
The conservationists promote traditional ways of life, but most people want at least a few modern conveniences. One of the few hydro plants is to be located in this valley. The plan is to construct 70 in Shar Planina. Although work appears to be already underway, Frozina Pandurska says the one here has not yet been approved. Not everybody in the villages of Shar Planina is concerned about protecting the environment and finding an alternative to improvised rubbish dumps. Construction of the hydropower plants up in the mountains is well underway. They use so much water that downstream in the valley, the water levels in the river are getting low. Parts of the Balkans still feel very remote and left behind. But even here, there seem to be more cars. Friends of Shar has several members of its team out and about in the area, including Vojislav Gushevsky.
There's still a lot of work to be done, and that includes explaining the issues to people and telling them about the rules on how to behave in a national park.
It now looks as if the Shar Planina National Park will finally be established next year. On paper, that is. But that is at least a start.
And now from the natural world of the Balkans to the wildlife of Australia. The land down under is a vast and ecologically diverse country. No wonder then that Australia's national parks attract millions of tourists each year, nor that many of Australia's 25 million residents prefer to spend their leisure time outside. Now the pandemic is encouraging some city dwellers to become even more acquainted with nature.
Bushcraft, how to survive in the wild. That's what Mark Bernard wants to learn on this course.
The one last thing to let nature get rid of these people themselves now.
When he was young, he worked on a farm in the outback.
And it even acknowledges they reduce Uyghur population density. China has angrily denied it's carrying out a form of slow genocide in Xinjiang through mass incarceration, forced sterilization, and birth control. Instead, it says its policies are designed to fight both Islamic extremism and poverty.
President Biden has said the United States is on course to produce enough coronavirus vaccine for every adult in the country by the end of May. Mr. Biden also said he would direct states to prioritize vaccinations for teachers by the end of March so schools could reopen safely. He said he was confident he would reach the target of delivering 100 million doses in the first 100 days of his presidency, but he cautioned that the fight against the pandemic was far from over. The Brazilian Health Ministry says it's registered 1,641 coronavirus deaths in the past 24 hours, the highest number since the pandemic began. Nearly 260,000 Brazilians have died. With the latest for us, here's Katie Watson.
In a week where scientists and health workers have been sounding alarm bells over the deteriorating situation in Brazil, these numbers perhaps come as no surprise. Now, at its worst point in the pandemic, in some parts of Brazil, hospitals have run out of intensive care beds. The country's health secretaries earlier this week called for tougher measures to be introduced across Brazil to avoid a wider collapse of the health system.
The chairman of the mining giant Rio Tinto has announced his resignation. Simon Thompson is the latest scalp following the firm's destruction of an ancient Aboriginal site in Western Australia last year. A fellow board director is also resigning. Sir Simon said he bore ultimate responsibility for a severe breach of Rio Tinto's values. The two caves were blown up despite protests. They contain some of the oldest indigenous artefacts found in Australia. BBC News. 7 students have fallen to their deaths in Bolivia. Video footage from El Alto University near La Paz shows the rail of a 4th-floor balcony giving way under the weight of a crowd of students. An investigation is underway. A report by the International Rescue Committee on the effect of 10 years of war in Syria has documented the devastating effect the conflicts had on the country's healthcare system. Our Arab Affairs editor is Sebastian Usher.
The IRC report says that surveys conducted with healthcare workers showed the extreme risk they've worked under during the war, with 80% of those surveyed saying they knew a co-worker or patient killed during an attack. One doctor described how he continued an operation even after a bomb fell just meters away. It's estimated that 70% of health workers have left the country, leaving just one doctor for every 10,000 people. Half of the more than 230 civilians interviewed for this report said they now feared accessing healthcare as a result of attacks.
The European People's Party is expected to decide today whether the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán's Fidesz can remain in the centre-right bloc. The party's membership of the EPP was suspended in 2019 after Mr. Orbán made a series of controversial attacks on liberal democracy. The The EPP will vote on changes to internal rules that could make it easier to expel members accused of undermining its principles. Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, is due to appear before an inquiry into her government's handling of allegations against her predecessor in a case that could damage her push for independence from Britain. The Scottish National Party leader has strongly denied claims she misled Parliament in Edinburgh about what she knew of the sexual assault allegations against Alex Salmond. He was cleared of all charges at a trial last year. BBC News.
Thank you for that news, and welcome to News Today with James and Lawrence, who's about to learn all about the American Defense Production Act. And we'll hear from China with more details of the government treatment of the Uyghur minority. We'll talk about the continuing targeting of the media in Afghanistan. And remember the reggae great Bunny Wailer, who's died. Remember, you can send us a text message on anything you hear. Our number is +44 77 86 20 50 85. That's Newsday.
Let's start talking about Joe Biden's promise of round-the-clock vaccine production, every teacher jabbed by the end of the month and every adult American vaccinated by the end of May. A major part of this accelerated program of US inoculation is Biden's use of the Defense Production Act. It's basically a government way of forcing rival companies to work together to boost production. So, the pharma giant Johnson & Johnson have a vaccine ready, and their rival pharmaceutical company, Merck, is going to have to help to make enough doses. What difference does it make? What does it mean for each company? That was the question for John Grabenstein. Now, he's a former Army colonel and spent 13 years in the vaccine division of Merck, and is now part of the medical NGO, the Immunization Action Coalition.
So the Defense Production Act dates back to the Korean War, and it basically lets the U.S. government set priorities for where commodities like coal would go, or steel. And in this case, it's being used to prioritize where certain materials or machinery, equipment is going.
And what does it mean to the companies involved? If Merck and J&J, which I guess are at different stages of vaccine development, this is about vaccine production, about getting the volume of stuff to put into American arms. What will it mean practically? Will the companies welcome this, or is it an interference? How do they perceive it?
From the big picture, it's what society needs, and that's what the companies are there for. Surely there will be some disruption to normal business, that maybe some products will have to be deferred.
Hey, if everybody dies,
machinery, there's only a finite amount of these machines and the people to run them. And so there might be some displacement and some delays in other products, but it would be products judged less important, less crucial than COVID-19 vaccine.
How important is this? Is it something that's going to improve what is perceived as a problem?
Well, each of these companies has been sprinting for the last 6, 9 months, 12 months to scramble to put together plans for manufacturing that, in the normal course of things, they would have the luxury of years to plan and do this efficiently, calmly and coolly. But everybody is scrambling to get the production maximized as fast as possible. And in this case, it's going against the grain a little bit, but it's taking machines from a lesser project to put on an important project.
It's interesting you say against the grain. I mean, obviously this is done, so the Biden administration would say, in the public interest. Is there a sense that this is not in the private interest? It's not in the commercial interest of the companies to do. That's why they're being forced to do it.
No, I think that I don't think that's right. I mean, Merck was planning to have its own vaccine. That plan, did not come to pass. The product didn't pan out. But so it has a certain degree of machinery and personnel waiting, who were going to work on that project in March, April, May, June, who now are available to be put to the cooperative effort of helping another company. And we should say that this is a very technically complicated project. At some point, somebody is going to be turning over thousands of pages of instructions, figuratively or literally, I'm not sure, of how to make this product precisely so that product coming out of one plant is identical to the product coming out of another plant with really high quality.
Could you give us an idea of when the effect of this will be felt?
It will help eventually, but as I said, it's a very technically complicated process. It'll take weeks or months to get the machines in place, the validation to make sure that they do exactly what they're supposed to do. This is not a quick fix. This is something that'll bear fruit, a couple months from now, but then will continue to bear fruit, for as long as Merck stays engaged with this project.
John Gravenstein of the Immunization Action Coalition explaining the Defense Production Act and what difference it's going to make to vaccine production in the US.
Except for Reddit, where the losers win.
The BBC investigation has found evidence that China's policy of transferring hundreds of thousands of Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities from northwest Xinjiang to factory jobs, often far from home, is being used as a method of uprooting and assimilating the population. It's also uncovered possible connections between these workers and major international brands. China says transferring workers away from the region is a way of tackling rural poverty and unemployment. Our China correspondent, John Sudworth, has this report.
See the door open there? You can see some people inside. At this plastics factory in Anhui province, the Uyghur workers are clearly visible, more than 2,000 miles from home.
Cars inside.
Brought all the way to eastern China by a massive relocation scheme. This announcement in one Xinjiang village says the authorities are searching for 100 people to send away to work in clothing factories. State media footage shows how the scheme works. Absolutely no one volunteers, the reporter tells us. So officials go house to house. If you stay here, one of them tells a young woman, you will be married soon and never be able to leave. Will you go? He asks. No, she replies. But the persuasion continues, and finally, under heavy pressure and weeping, she agrees.
This video is remarkable.
Professor Laura Murphy is an expert in human rights and contemporary slavery at the UK's Sheffield Hallam University, who lived in Xinjiang between 2004 and 2005 and has visited since.
Because this shows us quite clearly is that this is not something that people do voluntarily, that they're being coerced into doing it, that they're being hounded. This is a deliberate attempt to undo Uyghur life, culture, families, and to diminish its population.
Now the BBC has seen a high-level Chinese study produced for senior officials but posted online accidentally that provides a rare acknowledgement of exactly that point. The labour transfers, it says, are an important method to influence, meld and assimilate Uyghur minorities, which can bring about a transformation of their thinking and reduce Uyghur population density. Some of Xinjiang's mainly Muslim minorities are sent first to the giant re-education camps, where China says it's fighting extremism, and then to the factories. Arbeket Otabay, a member of the Kazakh minority, is one of the few that have been released and managed to leave China.
There were 200 workers in the factory. We sold children's clothes, and we were obliged to sing the Chinese national anthem. They said, the faster you work, the faster we will let you go.
But most of those transferred to work have not been in the camps and are sent directly from poor villages. The study also outlines how they're transported in groups, accompanied by security guards, and put through political indoctrination. Dr. Adrian Zenz is a senior fellow at the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation in Washington.
Excessive Uyghur growth, excess surplus population that somehow has to be dealt with, that labor transfers are a means to reduce the concentration of the Uyghurs in their own heartlands, is, in my opinion, the most stunning admission of this report.
mean, some of the windows are open. There's some trailers on the windowsill up there.
Look at cloth hanging out from one.
Our investigation examined 6 different factories across 3 provinces in China and found evidence that this transferred labour has entered international supply chains.
What was your BBC, Gigi? What was your you?
We found products that may contain yarn from this company on sale on Amazon in the UK. The factory says it no longer employs Uyghurs, and Amazon told us it doesn't tolerate forced labour. And another factory making plastic mouldings for major electronics brands also has Xinjiang staff. So we've spoken to one worker at this factory who has confirmed that as many as a few hundred Uyghurs are employed here. But unlike the Chinese staff, they are unable to leave the factory premises. The Chinese Foreign Ministry told us that the study seen by the BBC is based only on the author's personal views, and that much of the content is not in line with the facts. But in large part, the study echoes government thinking. Some Uyghurs, it concludes, are unwilling to leave their homes, a problem that should be tackled with strong guidance and persistent measures.
Our China correspondent John Sudworth reporting.
This is Newsday from the BBC World Service, coming up to 17 minutes past the hour. It's time for the business news from Hong Kong with Andrew Wood, who's been talking a lot about mining giants and largely in terms of their profits recently, but now a story about the company Rio Tinto and a high-profile resignation, yet another casualty of this case involving Aboriginal heritage in Western Australia. Andrew, tell us more.
Yeah, last year Rio Tinto destroyed an archaeological site that had shown evidence of continuous human habitation, Aboriginal habitation, dating back 46,000 years. It was doing it to expand or build an iron ore mine, which apparently had 8 million tons of very high-grade iron ore, a value estimated at around about $100 million US. And now the chairman of the company Rio Tinto, Simon Thompson, says he's going to step down as chairman after next year's annual general meetings, and he said he is ultimately accountable for the failings that led to this tragic event. There was an enormous backlash in Australia over this, not just from archaeologists and politicians and Aboriginal bodies, but also from investors as well. And you know, they felt, some investors felt that they didn't really want to invest in a company that was so careless of Australian archaeological heritage.
Now, he's the chairman, so he's at the top, but he's not the first head to roll, is he?
No. Other executives have left. The chief executive of Rio Tinto last year was also punished by losing more than $3 million of bonuses and payments. And so on, the chief executive of the iron ore division lost more than, I think, about $700,000 and so on, and there were more bonus cuts as well for remuneration. It doesn't seem to be enough, though, still to assuage critics of Rio Tinto for doing this. Rio Tinto has said that it's going to try and restore the site, but that doesn't seem to be particularly likely to get it anything like after it's been blown up or destroyed. And you know, even like pension funds have been sort of saying, well, we don't want to invest in a company like Rio Tinto if it does stuff like this, and has been very, very angry and vocal at shareholder meetings about Rio Tinto's performance here.
Many thanks indeed. On the line from Hong Kong with the business news, that's Andrew Wood. This is Newsday from the BBC World Service. And I am hesitating before introducing Al Ross with the sport. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you very much, Lawrence. Not as good as Man City fans. This morning, another win, more records for the club, who are now 15 points clear at the top of the Premier League after their 4-1 victory.
He has a fight over anything.
It's called Birthwater. And it just sort of explores the experience of being Sudanese and what that means, and coming through as refugees, and maybe being quite young and not understanding that, and perhaps not even being told that story.
There, well, that's not the point, Melody. She couldn't have put it there at all.
because she had no way to get into the chest. You see, when Sterling sent me over here, she gave me her keys. Well, I forgot to give them back to her. Here they are. I still have them. In other words, Melody, you were the only one who could put the discharge bottle there in the chest. Very true what you said before. One of a housekeeper's major duties is being keeper of the key. Miss Melody, that isn't true, is it? Miss Melody, it isn't true. No, of course it isn't. Don't listen to them, Caroline. No, Caroline, don't listen to us. Listen to Melody. Let her keep drugging you with lies until you see everything she wants you to see. And hear everything she wants you to hear. That's what she did to Flora, you know. She flooded that poor girl's imagination with absolute terror. And then she killed her. I didn't kill her. Why should I? Why would I want to? Why? So you could get Flora out of your way. So you could accuse me of killing her and get me out of your way, too. You could have a clear path to Miss Nash. Well, Melody, your plan backfired. But you're not getting me out of this school. Helen, what? So phone the police. I'll never leave. You hear that? I'll never leave. Never. Oh, yes, you will, Melody. Yes, you will. And Sterling was right, too. For within the month, Melody was an inmate of a quite different kind of institution than the Nash School. Life settled down then into a state of normalcy that lasted through the rest of the year. Lasted, in fact, up to just 4 hours ago, when I was crossing the grounds toward the main gate. All of the teachers had gone into town, and I was on my way to join them. When I saw it there on the grass, a tiny object, glistening dully in the late afternoon sun. What made me pick it up, I don't know. But when I did, it was as though a rocket exploded in my brain. It was a small empty bottle, and its label bore the slightly faded letters of the word digitalis. Then in the next instant... Find something? Sterling! Yes, I found something, Sterling. This bottle labeled digitalis. You know, I bet anything in the world a good chemist can find traces of a sleeping drug in it. You mean? Then you found it. Melody's bottle. Melody's bottle? My guess is that Melody's bottle, as you put it, never will be found because it never existed except in your mind. What? I picked this bottle up right here, Sterling, right where I'm standing, just 3 feet from the trash bin behind your cottage. That was careless of me, wasn't it? You used this bottle. You used it to get Flora Nash out of your way, to kill her and make good on your warning. You're taking it to the police, I suppose? I want to see if they can find your fingerprints on it, Sterling. Yes, I'm going to take it to the police as fast as I can get there. Certainly, what? And the best of luck! She went on inside her cottage, and I struck out across the grounds to the main gate and the road into town. I reached the gate just in time to hear the school caretaker hang it shut. Miss Sterling, he explained, had just telephoned the order. An early closing hour. I remembered the service driveway then. The other passageway through those high stone walls which had compassed the grounds. And I found that it, too, it was locked. I was a prisoner. And then it was right then that the solution came to me. I should have thought of it before. Miss Nash herself was in those grounds, right on the top floor of my own building. I would take the bottle to her. I would show her the proof. I flew up the stairs, down the corridor, entered her small waiting room, and then stopped. Just beyond me, through the open doorway of the darkened street was Sterling and Miss Nash. Before this school year ends. That's the warning I hear. Warning? From Flora, did you say? From my niece? From your niece. Oh, she says there will be more tragedy. Oh, no. Before this school year ends. Tragedy. Oh, so one more woman here. My strength left me completely then. I don't know whether I fainted or not or how I got back to my room, but I'm here in it now. And it is just 10 minutes before midnight. 10 minutes before the school year ends. My door is locked. She has locked it from the outside. But now that door is going to open, and she's coming in. What? What are you going to do with it? This revolver. I'm going to use it to fulfill a prediction. Please, don't, please. Laura made a prediction to Miss Nash tonight. Laura made it through me. Do you understand that? Laura made it. I heard her. I really heard her. Saying that there would be one more death before the school year ends. Please! And that prediction is going to come true. Now! Hello, the police station. You'd better send someone over to the Nash school right away. There's been somebody shot herself dead. And please tell Miss Melody that she'll be out soon. Tell her that Lady Macbeth is gone.
And so closes Finishing School, starring Margot, Elsa Lanchester, and Janet Beecher. Tonight's tale of suspense.
Before we tell you about our star and story for next week, a word about an American anniversary of 173 years this week. Still standing in California is a little winery founded in 1771. Settlers from foreign countries discovered early that California vineyards were among the world's finest. That in the rare combination of climate and soil which produces perfect wine grapes, California surpasses some of the most famous old world vineyards. Take Roma California Sherry or Port. They are magnificent wines, truly delightful. Yet, like all Roma wines,
here at RDB 4 Sangi.
The Tosh released Legalize It. Bob Marley released Rastaman Vibration, while Bonnie Wheeler released his first album, Blackheart Man.
0033 213 820045 mais 351 se estiver fora de Portugal.
Right. We're here to help. Please contact.
This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
You're listening to Chin Radio AM 1540, the voice of multicultural Toronto, bringing you the latest updates on COVID-19. Stay informed, stay safe, and stay tuned to Chin Radio AM 1540.
The Columbia Network takes pleasure in bringing you...
It's a twofer, it's a double header. Or triple, what was the one that was X minus 1 today, right? Tomorrow is Suspense. Leader of the mind.
Suspense, a new series of programs with one strict purpose in view, your entertainment. Each week at this time, CBS sets aside 30 minutes to excite you, to mystify you, and on occasion to horrify you, with a catalog of the world's great thrillers, dramas from the stage and screen, from fiction and radio, dramas that bring you suspense. This The second offering of a new series is a unique one. Certainly, it is one of the very few pieces of suspense literature that somehow manages to tickle your funny bone while busily engaged in, make no mistake though, nobody's kidding. CBS presents its adaptation of John Collier's well-known short story, Wet Saturday.
Oh, this one again? Really?
Yes, it's a wet Saturday. Never saw it rain harder. I'm Princey, Frederick Princey, just an ordinary family man. I have a son, a daughter, and a wife. I'd be out golfing now if it hadn't been for...
I'm Mrs. Princey. I plan to drive over to the nurseries this afternoon to the Arbiters. The boarders, you know. But...
the whole lot of them make me sick. Yes, I'm George, son and heir. I had a date to go punting. Couldn't find the blasted punter weather, so I'm home too.
I'm Millicent. I was going to play croquet. That's how I happened to have married.
Yes, that's the Princey family. We find them at home. Mrs. Princey, Millicent, George sprawled on a couch, Mr. Princey biting on a dry pipe. Their living room is dull and overstuffed. Rain beats at the windows. They are any middle-class family at home on a wet day, except for one small item. As you sit with them in the living room, you can see through the door to the sun porch a pair of men's feet, encased in black boots. They look like the feet of a curate. There's a tenseness in the room. The air is charged with excitement, but the feet are very still.
Don't keep staring at them. Listen to me, all of you. Don't you see? They hang her. That's what they do. They hang her.
Oh, Fred, it's too awful.
That's awful. It's catastrophic. A supposedly sweet, gentle, intelligent girl, respected, loved by the whole village, doing a thing like this. The publicity is a disgrace. You think I'm going to resign from the bench, the fester, sell out and live in some foggy hotel abroad? Oh, no.
No, I'll kill myself. I will.
Don't be a fool. Any more than you have been, the governor means. Be quiet. Wouldn't be so bad if it were you. Everybody in the village knows you're not responsible. George. Yes? Get off that couch. Sit up on your spine. You might be of a little use here if you could think. Listen, Governor, this isn't my funeral. Oh, shut up. As long as I can remember, George, you've been a trial and a tribulation to me.
Oh, I can't stand it. I can't stand it.
You've got to stand it, my dear. And keep that hysterical note out of your voice. You hear? We are talking about the weather. Now, George. Yeah? George, if he fell down the old well, say, striking his head several times, what about it, eh? I really don't know, Governor. What about it? Don't be an ass. I'm asking you to think. He'd have had to hit the side several times in 30 or 40 feet and at all the correct angles. No, I'm afraid not. We'll have to go over it all again, Millicent.
Oh, no, Father. No. I couldn't.
Millicent, we must go over it all again.
Oh, Fred, you're torturing me.
Oh, face facts, Mater. With him lying there, there's no use pretending it's a picnic. They might hang you, Millicent. Oh, stop that shaking. Stop it here. You must stop it. Just keep your voice quiet. Millicent, we are talking of the weather. Now, we will proceed.
I can't.
Oh, should have thought of those boots, Millie. I'm not moving them. Oh, sit up, George. Stop shuffling your feet. Now, Millicent, look at me. Answer me truthfully, you hear? Answer me. You were in the croquet court. Who knew you were in love with this wretched curate?
Oh, the whole village. They've been sniggering about it at the pub for 3 years past.
What a filthy mess. Millicent, we continue. You were on the croquet court.
Yes.
You were putting the croquet set into its box?
Yes. It was starting to rain. I was carrying the balls and mallets into the sun porch. The box was there.
You heard someone enter the garden gate and come across the yard?
Yes.
Could you see who it was?
Oh, not at first. I was going into the sun porch. I threw down all the mallets but the red one and turned around.
It was Withers?
Yes.
So you called him? Loudly? Did you call him loudly? Could anyone have heard?
No, Father, I'm sure not. I didn't really call him. I just spoke his name. He saw me as I went to the door. He just waved his hand and we came over.
How can I find out from you whether there was anyone about? Whether he could have been seen?
I'm sure not, Father. I'm quite sure.